This is one of those topics. We're going to bring in Joshua Chin now. One of those topics that is a national problem, but we've seen it a lot in debate locally as well. Joshua comes to us from Young Voices, like a few of our other guests today, and we appreciate them sharing their expertise with us. He's got a master's in economics from George Mason, but his underground was in sociology and psychology. So he's going to explain to us the mysteries of the human mind when it comes to controversial issues, aren't you, Joshua?
I'll do my best. Thank you so much for having me here.
How is that teeing up? No pressure, right?
Yeah, I still feel it, but I really want to help people understand critical race theory based on my experience as an immigrant, as an Asian American, right? In America right now, Asian Americans are kind of at the forefront of this critical race theory debate. And I just want to help people understand why that's the case.
You say the forefront, but some people would argue that became because some of the debates when it comes to higher academia, especially what we saw at Harvard over past years, there's a lot of debate over standardized testing. The Asian American community, they kind of got squeezed to the front because the multiple sides just kind of pushed them out and they didn't have anywhere to go in the discussion. Isn't that so?
Yeah, that's correct. I think, well, personally, my experience is that Asian Americans really struggle to fit in with critical race theory the way it's argued, right? My parents are small business owners. They pursue the American dream. They now own a house, a couple cars, just like everyone who immigrates here hopes to, right? And I think that Asian Americans and past immigrant ethnicities, Germans, Irish, they are in touch with an economic process that makes them upwardly mobile economically and socially. And I think that critical race theory is kind of the antithesis to that.
How much of before we get into the details, and I want to discuss how you approach this issue, but how much of this is just you have different people who speak different languages talking past each other? And I don't mean this in a mean way, but people in academia, they have a certain language they talk to each other in. People in politics have a certain language they talk to each other in. People who are, construction workers, they have a certain language they talk to. Military people, when I talk to military vets, we have our own language. We really do. We can tell immediately, just from the way we talk.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to me like a lot of the critical race theory, because it came out of an academic environment, it was an academic exercise originally. A lot of this is folks talking past each other without even using the same nomenclature and not understanding what they're trying to convey, even if they're trying to do it in good faith.
I think that's definitely part of it. Trump really exposed the divide between what's been referred to as faculty lounge politics, right? No one uses critical race theory or communities of color in a normal conversation. They say neighborhood, right? Like, it is partially a language issue in that the jargon just isn't lining up, and the disconnect wasn't big. What hasn't been bigger, and Trump really exposed that. But I think in my article, I'm arguing that there is no alternative framework to explain success in America or your experience in America besides critical race theory right now. I think that's really where economics has fallen short, because part of why America is great is the property rights here are very strong, right? And I can appreciate that because I'm the son of immigrants. I have a reference point to what is another context, right? As compared to America. I have a relative in Korea who is on the board of a corporation, and he's in a condo. He's one of the most successful men, and meanwhile, my dad, when he immigrated here, he was a gardener first, right? My mom was a seamstress, but they managed to work their way up, and yeah, now they're homeowners. And that process, I think we don't have the language to explain that process to people and defend why America is great.
Joshua Chin's joining us. Take us to the academic end of that debate. People on a practical level think economics is, buying stuff, buying homes, success in business like you're talking about. Explain to us the other end where you have been writing about there's some failings in the academic side of it, where there's just some basic, maybe is illiteracy too strong a word, of just we're not teaching basic economics before we teach some other things, and it's skewing the viewpoint of the college students that we're producing right now?
Kind of. I think that economists, economics is a very strong framework. Everyone understands supply and demand. We all have seen a price on Amazon change over the course of a day or a week. But I think economics professors are blind to the fact that they too are academics, right? So they don't have a strong incentive to make sure you learn something. So when you come to an economics class, they tell you, oh, there's no such thing as a free lunch, and that doesn't blow your shoes off. They just brush that off as, oh, he just doesn't get it because he's an academic, right? It's less about illiteracy and more that they don't understand the incentives of their own position, even though they look down upon social science professors, like sociology, psychology professors, and their wishy-washy soft science. They're all academics. So where economists fail, well, economic professors fail is that they tend to focus so much on the nitty-gritty, the math, supply and demand curves, and not on the things that people actually want to learn about. Like, I think the example I use in my piece is how millennials don't really understand economics outside a business context. So they don't understand that universities also measure profit, not in money, but in how many degrees they can get out. So they're not really incentivized to fail you, right? And they're not really incentivized to find you a job either. So you have a lot of social science majors like me graduating with a degree that's worthless, and they blame capitalism instead of blaming, just subsidizing a degree mill, basically.
Yeah. You wrote in that piece at thedailybell.com. You can look it up. Josh Shin joining us. And I'll just quote you here because I think this is a good way to explain it. Quote, millennials were misled to only associate economics with money, capitalism, and competition. And libertarians, with their obsession of tax and affordability, did little to set the record straight. And this is why millennials, so sensitive to material inequality, often end up fleeing to socialism, not realizing that centralized power in government doesn't omit competition from the system. It just moves it from business to politics. I think that's about as clear an explainer because I think people kind of are abusing the socialism term without going into the next step of it as like, hey, you're not really ending control here. You're just shifting the management sign from one group to another. When you wrote that and you're trying to convey that to folks, what were you trying to get across?
It's the same. I think it's the same point that I made regarding economics outside business, right? That's another scenario where economics basically says you have to manage scarce resources. You have to have a system for it, right? Not everything is unlimited. So millennials, because they focus on capitalism, they focus on the scarcity of money, material resources, whereas political capital, social capital, right? The people who are going to colleges, who can afford to go to college or are living in these urban areas, they tend to have a lot more social capital, maybe even free time at work because they work at a computer to talk about these things. And they're blind to that because they don't see economics as applying to them, right? They see socialism as a break from economics. They see higher education as a break from business and money, especially if you, like me, you grow up working class. It seems like a great way to step away from it, but that's really dangerous. You have kids nowadays who go from K-12 through higher education, learning in an environment that doesn't have hard trade-offs, right? They don't understand how the real world works and are shocked when their employer expects them to perform because the system they've been educated in doesn't really hold them to that standard.
Joshua Chin joining us. You're in that environment. You're more recent. People tend to use the academic wars and college students as sort of proxies for other bigger things. But what do you see? You're in that environment a little bit more. You're closer to it. What is it overall do you think is going on in academia with students? Do you see pushback? Do you see new thought? Do you see a narrowing of thought? How do you overall see the academic picture when it comes to things like CRT and economics and these things that we are debating?
So I haven't seen it personally. I've been in the postgraduate space for a while, so right. I can't say for sure. But I know that the next generation coming up, the Gen Zers, they actually swing more conservative. So it was actually the New York Times that reported that more kids between 13 and 17 would prefer a traditional homemaker breadwinner arrangement with the breadwinner as male. You see a lot of jaded attitudes from Gen Z towards millennials and all the debt they've accrued for degrees that don't mean anything, right? And why I think economics is important is it would give them the language to call out those errors, right? I was a sociology major for 6-7 years. I actually moved to DC for grad school for sociology, for a master's in sociology. And inside sociology, there's always this debate about the sociology of sociology departments, right? Why do tenured professors struggle? Why do tenured professors act like they can't lose their jobs? Because they can't lose their jobs, right? Economics talks about it. Yeah, economics talks about it through incentives and trade-offs. It's such a simple framework that allows people to explain where they come from, where their family comes from, without bringing race into the picture. Right. So my hope, I think that this next generation has seen the errors of millennials, of my generation. It's just, I believe it's economics professors that are at the forefront of giving them the vocabulary and the understanding to talk about it in an effective way.
Mm. Joshua Shin joining us. Put your sociology hat on for a second, since we are talking race and you've talked about your own background. The census data came out. Asian Americans, fastest growing group, 35.5% over the last 10 years, an explosion in growth. Places like California, it's astronomical growth. That includes Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, Pacific Islanders, kind of a wide swath. But obviously, sociology-wise, political-wise, going forward in the culture, this is going to be a very, very important demographic for a lot of people, not just academically, but in politics. That means more power for them. That means more cultural integration with them. Where do you see, since you're from that background, kind of the success story and maybe promoting that success story as, hey, this is a great American story. Look how well we've done here, as opposed to some of the negative aspects we have to talk about when it comes to race?
Yeah, that's a great point and a great question. Asian Americans are at a kind of a crossroads when it comes to their identity within American culture and society, right? When I was growing up, I didn't have an Asian American culture to fall back on. So I was the one that had to explain the difference between North and South Korea to my neighbors. And they were well-intentioned. I never held that against them. And we also kind of looked down upon those who had just come from Asia as fresh off the boat, because they didn't understand the culture. But now we're turning back around, and younger Asians are starting to try to claim a Asian American culture for themselves. So there's this conflict between how American do we be? And I think that for me personally, the answer is America lets us be who we want, right? Like my parents are part of a Korean church community. It's very typical amongst Koreans in America to kind of use that as a extended family of sorts. They can practice their beliefs. They can have a small business. They can own property because America lets us, right? We have very strong property rights. I've actually defended the Second Amendment to my parents when I was convincing them to get a CCW, as the government trusting you to defend your stuff. Right. And that's so unique to America. Yeah. I think that the danger I see again is that the right needs to provide an alternative to critical race theory as an explanation for why America is the way it is, and to defend the American dream. A lot of I can only speak for Korean Americans that I've met, but the conservative ones, they tend not to go into politics because they'd rather not bother. Right? They understand intuitively why America works the way it does. They tend to go into business, right? Like my parents did, because that's when an outsider looks at America, when they watch The Simpsons and our sitcoms, they see a middle class, and that doesn't exist a lot of other places. Right. So I'm optimistic. I think that the higher education debate with admissions and the recent new demographics that Trump has won over in 2020, especially amongst Koreans and Vietnamese Americans, will help defend the American culture and the American dream. I just wish that economics did more to be part of that conversation instead of doing research and looking down on people that don't have common sense.
And I look forward to you writing that omnibus explainer of all that, how the American dream will fix all this, my friend, in the future. He's Joshua Shin, spelled S-H-I-N. Tell folks where they can find your work so they can add you to their information rotation, my friend.
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter at Joshua, B as in boy, Shin, and I hope to be writing a lot more on this topic. I'm very passionate about it. I've had to defend my experience in the social sciences, and I'd like to help arm people with the tools that they need to answer in their own communities.
Yep. And those are the voices we need, and those are the voices we like to promote in our independent media efforts. Joshua Shin, great job, buddy. Appreciate your time, sir. You have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Have a great one.
Thank you, sir.